Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about risk-based auditing. So there's been a lot of focus certainly about risk-based monitoring and risk-based all sorts of things. And what we want to think about is that it's not just a buzzword. I just did an audit of a CRO last week, and that was one of the concerns. They were talking about how they do risk-based, and I was thinking, gosh, you are operating at risk. It's just not the controlled risk we want to have in place. So we're going to talk about how we can incorporate this into our quality assurance processes. So we'll look at the structure of the quality assurance-quality control relationship, look at similarities and differences in risk-based auditing and risk-based monitoring as we've transitioned into that. Look at elements of risk-based auditing, compare them to traditional auditing practices. We'll also talk about risk assessment and management principles in relation to quality assurance in the clinical environment, and talk about timing of audits and how it impacts on our ability to assess and control risks. And then finally, looking at noncompliance trends and the regulatory focus that we see from the FDA for sponsors, CROs, monitors, sites, and institutional review boards. So because the FDA has jurisdiction to inspect all of those areas, they anticipate that we will be mindful of what they're looking for. And of course, each of us, whether we're a site, some sites have clinical quality assurance, especially your larger sites, your phase 1 sites, what have you. We also know that sponsors and CROs also employ quality assurance techniques, even though the FDA considers it to be optional. They do say that if you have that capability, they expect it to be structured in a certain way. And then, of course, with AHAR accreditations, certainly more and more IRBs are also incorporating quality assurance into what they do. And there's a difference working with IRBs and working at IRBs. We see where their focus might be on one particular area, but the thought is looking at what quality assurance means. It's making sure that we build quality into each aspect of our processes. So we know that good clinical practice is what governs what we do, however we define it, from regulatory definitions, internal policies and processes and procedures, ICH E6, ISO 14155, the EU directive, wherever you are doing your work. We have to think about GCP as that scientific and ethical standard for how we interact with human research participants. And our end goal in good clinical practice and in all interaction with human research participants is making sure that we get good data from protected subjects. So when we talk through this, I always try to remind folks, because sometimes I slip into this, is that when I talk about your product, I'm not talking about the investigational product you're being studied. I'm talking about that good data from protected people. That really is, in my opinion, our end goal, regardless of therapeutic area or investigational product type. We use audits as systematic and independent examinations of the activities within a trial. And ICH defines for us, and it'll be interesting to see if they update this when they update ICH E6, defines for us that it is a process or a set of processes for really determining compliance retrospectively. And this is something that the FDA also has been cited for by the OIG and others, saying that we're coming in and we're doing our audits after the fact. So the FDA was actually cited for being more interested in data integrity than they were subject safety, which is a fairly stinging rebuke for a public health agency. So the purpose of an audit really is to look at systems, to be independent of those systems, but to review them and make sure that we're getting what we need. We know that audits, as we move more towards that risk-based approach, are doing them more real-time. Even pre-qualification audits, I do spend a lot of time doing those as well. And this is one of the things I'll be going off and doing next week, looking at a vendor, making sure that they have everything they need in place to meet the needs of the individual or the group that is going to be contracting with them, hopefully. So auditing, quality assurance, they are planned and systematic actions. So it's no coincidence that that word systematic comes up twice. We are looking at systems when we go out. So we have to think about how our systems need to function for us to be able to meet our obligations and requirements. So these are planned and systematic actions that are established to make sure that we are in compliance with what it is we said we are going to be following. What's monitoring? Again, a lot of focus on risk-based monitoring. It's the act of overseeing the progress of that trial and making sure it is being conducted, recorded, reported in accordance with all of those requirements. So it is more and deemed more of a real-time process. That's why when we train our monitors, we try to train them like auditors. We want them to think like that. We want them to be looking at those systems as much as possible. They need to be doing their monitoring job, but we also know that monitors go out there a lot more than we do.